Welcome, friends, to the Fox and Owl Hoot and Howl Hour. Uh, this is Dave, and I'm here with Theo. And we have a really interesting topic to talk about today. But before we get into it, I want to introduce myself and introduce Theo, tell you a little bit about us and what we're all about here. This format is going to be a show where we talk to guests, we talk to people in the field of remote viewing about experiential situations, sessions, um, controversial topics, esoteric topics, anything that basically that we have interest in within the field. And just to give you a little bit of background, I've been an operational remote viewer for over 2 years now, formerly trained by a former Stargate member. I was awarded the Ingo Swann Legacy Scholarship, and then I was brought into formal training and operational work straight out of intermediate training. So that's pretty much a quick sum up of my background. I'm going to toss over to Theo to tell you, so he can tell you a little bit about himself. He's been doing this for even longer, and he's had several instructors from the Stargate program. Go ahead, Theo.
Okay, my name is Theo Fischer, and my history, how I came across remote viewing was more or less a coincidence, even if I don't believe anymore in coincidence. In 2019, I stumbled about a tweet on Twitter, a random tweet on Twitter, more or less, and they showed up Google Project Stargate, Google Project Grillflame, Google Project Sunstreak, and I watched site and looked and said, okay, I will try that. And it linked me directly to the CIA library with over 90,000 documents about remote viewing and all that programs. I watched that. I looked twice if I'm where I am here. So, okay. And I read about first time about remote viewing, what they're doing there, about the Stanford Research Institute the first time, about Hal Puthoff, and then I came across about the manual. So I thought to myself, I was stick, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks every day, 6 till 8 hours, only in the library. And after I came down a little bit, I thought, wow, that shit is real. So that is X-Men style, and I wanted to know more about that, and try to find some kinds of communities, thought about what they're doing today. Are there still communities today? And looking out for German communities, because I'm born in German, I'm native German. And there was something, and I tried to connect to them and came across the first remote viewers here in Germany, first remote viewers here in Germany. And I was not trained to this time and learned it in the beginning autodidactically. I decided then to be really trained from an instructor here in Germany um, in technical remote viewing, TRV, and up to stage 6 and all their tools, and started to work as a hobby and to discover more my abilities, ESP abilities over the methods of remote viewing. Um, um, it grew rapidly.
Also, 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 Fox and Owl. Just so people know, are our first call signs for operational work. That's why we kept them and we named the show Fox and Owl, Hoot and Howl Hour. So basically, Owl was my call
No.
sign. Fox Fox is Theo's. But go on, Theo. Sorry.
Uh, um, and I discovered fast that something I was missing something in all the method what I learned, what was taught to me, and I tried to reach out a little bit to the Great Sea over the Big Sea to the US, and I recognized that ex former Stargate members who offer trainings, and I started to make a course with David Morehouse. It was 9 months online, and later I flew to the US to have a training on Avis with Paul Smith and Bill Ray, and 221 and 222. And yeah, that is more or less my history. In the meanwhile, I was co-founder of Psy Unit and the Institute Psy Vision. And later, I I am the director of Psychorf operational work with remote viewing, and this is my story, my history,
Hmm.
and here we are now.
And you, yeah. And so you've been, so just so people don't, Theo's trained in TRV, CRV, and he's also worked in dream remote viewing. He does stuff with, working with the hemisync. So Theo runs the gambit of the modalities. I'm pretty comfortable. I like CRV, but I will say I'm very comfortable saying the two guys standing in front of you are two very proficient operational remote viewers. When we get into this topic, I want to make sure people listening understand, and as a disclaimer, what we're about to get into in this field, we don't have the answers. We don't know what this is. Okay, this is experiences that happen to us and others in the field. It's a topic that's not often talked about, or it's brushed under the rug. So when you're ready, you could open it up with some of Ingo's experience if you want. That you pulled up.
Yeah, I think that's a classical thing. Everybody from you, most of you knows the book Penetration from Ingo Swann, where he was more or less tasked from a kind of organization to review the moon, and he's talking directly about a situation to spot it on the moon. I will read a little bit out of his book here. I will screen share that. It's super interesting. So, but being there in my psychic state, as I felt I was, some of those guys started talking excitedly and gesticulating. Two of them pointed in my direction. So, side note, he's on the moon at the moment and is reviewing the moon. Immediately, I felt like running away and hiding, which I guess I psychically did since I lost sight of this particular imaging. I think they have spotted me, Axel. They were pointed at me, I think. How could they do that? Unless they have some kind of high psychic perception too. Axel said in calm, low voice, so low I hardly heard it at first. Please quickly come away from that place. My eyes were wide as I understanding drained in. You already know they are psychic, don't you? Axel raised his eyebrows and gave a deep sigh. And at that point, he abruptly closed his folders. I think we had better end our work here. I was quite surprised, but I had not fallen off the psychic truck just yesterday. You think you already know that they have some kind of telepathy? That they can trace where the psychic probe is coming from? Is that it? Axel had started smiling again, but obviously was not going to respond. Come on, Axel, loosen up a little. But I was not too deterred. Would they kill an Earth psychic if they felt he or she was good enough to spy on them? There's no conclusive evidence to suggest that, Axel responded. I gritted my teeth. No conclusive evidence? What the hell does that mean? My voice had climbed several octaves. It's very difficult for us to assess any of this, Axel wrote began. We don't know, but that they do have things and capabilities we here trying to understand is very apparent. Whether they
Mm-hmm.
spotted you or not will be unclear, but we have to put no prejudgments on what guides our mission. At any rate, we don't want to put you to any more risk. Let's eat some dinner and then get you back to New York.
Yeah, and there's a lot of viewers out there. I'm gonna say a lot. But there's some that their belief is that we are based like that we're not going anywhere. We're just accessing information. And I'm not trying to. I really don't know. I mean, anybody that says they know what's happening, they really don't. I mean, we just know that it works. So I'm not here to argue that, but I will say that there are a lot of remote viewers, including myself, who have got the impression that they were spotted at the target, especially the non-human type esoteric targets. So and often in this field, this topic is kind of overlooked or underbrushed, um, but it happens a lot. It's something other more progressive outfits talk about, and they're not afraid to discuss it. But I think it's time that we open it up and we talk about it a little. Now, there are bases, military bases, human bases, known bases around the globe that on occasion we both have been tasked to. Um, One in particular on U.S. soil, I did penetrate. You also were given that target, Area 51. I did seem to penetrate as you did. You one day we'll have a session of what we kind of picked up down there. But I did perceive. Now I did get in there, but I did perceive kind of like what I would describe as like an energetic bubble around that base. Now I did sketch it in my sketching. I didn't really know what it was. I've also had other classmates that went there and had really bad experiences where they got in and something unearthly was down there and basically told them it's a no-go zone. Um, Now, also peripherally, I have tasked Theo somewhere off U.S. Shores. And you want to talk a little bit about that, Theo? I don't want to give away
Yeah,
too much.
maybe
It's probably sensitive.
let us start with the Area 51 kind. The target itself was airplane museum. Lockheed SR-71 was the target, and solo I stepped into that target, and somehow I slipped into the development time of that aircraft, and I was starting to sketch a kind of bubble on something, and I had to make many times aesthetic impact breaks, as to say to my there came a feeling up, a nervous feeling, and it was more and more and more about the session. It goes so long that I disrupted the session and make end session, because there was something like a kind of shielding, maybe, I don't know, what makes my being there very, very uncomfortable for myself. That was my experience. I did not know what the target was, and after I opened up the target and I saw how it came, I googled it and tried to get information about, and they built it up and planned it more or less in the Groom Lake. So I referred that experience to Area 51. Was the first time when I came across a feeling like that something is in a target area what makes me feel really uncomfortable. Yeah. And the second
Yeah.
time I stepped in a little bit deeper into the Area 51 area, and maybe we will make an episode one day about that and go into more the topic what we discovered there. It's not a topic now, but this was not
Yeah.
so hard like my first experience.
Yeah, and what I'd like to bring up now too is about the other session is from what we've found. It's again, we don't know what this is. Okay, so but experientially, what we've found is it's not just the U.S. that has this. As a matter of fact, the place that you were at looked much more aggressive. I mean, they looked like they picked up on you right away. They were all over him.
It was, it came up then later in the session, and I starting to sketch, and I sketched the round table and people around and the map, and then another guy who really was part of that, and he had headphones, and most of the time when I'm starting to sketching headphones from somebody, it is a kind of remote viewer, kind of other being, or sometimes myself, but I was not sure at this moment, so I sketched, and it came up like a bug, like the people are recognizing a kind of bug in this room, and afterwards I understood what they perceived there. At least this is my analytical overlay to that they perceived myself in the target area. I became again an uncomfortable feeling, and I thought I've got to pull me out of the target, and it's better for me to go. Maybe I will show up some sketches out of that session, and I left that target.
From an analyst perspective, from an analyst perspective, it too as well. Just so everybody knows, it's completely like they spot you there, and the whole session they're like trying to track down his signal.
I
Very
thought about how this can be, how they could really track or spot remote viewing, from the humankind
Mm-hmm.
perspective, what
Mm-hmm.
humans can do. And normally it's I want to call it open secret, and I think we can speak openly about it. If you're looking back in the history and you're going back to 1972, the first meeting between Hal Puthoff and Ingo Swann, um, Hal Puthoff invited Ingo Swann to make a test, and he wanted that Ingo will start to change the magnetometer up or down, that
Yeah,
something is on proof.
magnetometer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Ingo went into this Faraday laboratory room and he asked, okay, where is this magnetometer? Because normally I can see them. Hal answered,
Mm-hmm.
kind of, it's sticked into the ground. And Ingo said, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I've got to see that, but give me a second. He's starting to took a page and starting to sketch. And to this time, when he tried to grab how this magnetometer is looking, the magnetometer is starting to went
Right.
crazy.
That
Uh,
that's how I understood it
and
too. That he was tasked to remote view the magnetometer, and by the process of remote viewing it had an effect
exactly,
on the magnetometer, meaning that there is a just from that experiment alone should at least prove to some degree that
remote viewing is
something can
detectable.
detect. It's detectable.
Yeah,
Yes, exactly, to some degree. So we know that the governments know that it works. We know that multiple governments have used it. So to assume that other governments are using it, and to want to defend against
each other.
secret, yeah, you'd think that they would put something like that in place. It doesn't seem to me that far of a stretch of a guess. But again, yeah, I don't know what this is. These are our experiences, not just ours. I have several other remote viewers in the field who have very similar experiences.
This experience with
Mm-hmm.
Ingo and Hal shows the proof for that. I think it's
Yeah.
interesting to talk about not only the human side, especially things what have
Mm-hmm.
nothing to do with directly ours or with where other civilizations or other
Mm-hmm.
species are involved.
Yeah.
Like we made a video about this underground bases in under the Monte Perdido, and you went there.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of experience you had there? How it was for you?
It's interesting because I've had, like, by now I've had so many of these targets, and it's interesting how some a lot of these things, from my perspective, and I'm not the only one. A lot of these things, these non-human things, when you get up and close and personal with them, and when you're sketching them, when you're probing them, it's almost like they have a higher degree of awareness than a human does. It's almost like they know you're messing around, they know you're there, they know you're in their mind. And but what's interesting though is like for Mount Perdido, I had this session of a joint base ET human base thing going on. But what was interesting is I kind of got the sense they kind of knew I was poking around, but they didn't push me out. They didn't use any aggressive um, anything. I didn't have those like very dark. Because later on we'll talk about some of these other things that are very aggressive. Like at Area 51, it was more like it was kind of like just trying to push you out. There are other things, especially non-human type bases, that are much more aggressive. They like it's a no-go zone. So Mount Perdido seemed relatively non-aggressive in that way. I mean, they felt like they were there, but they weren't trying to kick me out aggressively in that particular location.
Yeah. In which sessions you had a most uncomfortable feeling? I mean, I
Okay.
remember two, but maybe you want to talk about one of them.
Yeah, yeah. So there was a session that the reason why I don't say what event this was is because I don't want other remote viewers to be passing this around. But there was and this is why some people that say, "Oh, you can't get hurt," and this, there are when you go looking for dark things, you may find them. So there's a lot of people, "Oh, you can't get detected in CRV." Okay, that there's some things we just don't understand. Okay, so anyway, I was tasked to this event that happened quite some time ago, and Theo was actually monitoring me on this one. Now this was passed around back in the Stargate days, from what I mean, unofficially, from what I understand, I believe.
Yeah,
But again, with very non-earthly, not friendly type beings, seem to attack a large group of military personnel on the water. Now, I was tasked that event. Um, in the beginning of the session, typically, especially remote viewers, like, you go in there, you're very you want to go in there and take a big old bite out of it. Okay, so very early on, as I'm building up to my AI, I felt this feeling of, and you get EIs, like you could separate the difference between other people's feelings and your feelings, and this was something else. This was something as if it was applying its attention on me, and it almost felt, if you could imagine, the closest thing I describe is if somebody went in your mind and there's a fear button and they just started
yeah,
pressing it rapidly. I'm sitting in my living room. I have Theo as a monitor, and for some reason, I'm getting this. It's the most bizarre because it feels unnatural. Fear works in a certain way. You see something, something's expressed, and you have a reaction to it. There was nothing.
fear
It
force.
came out of nowhere. Yeah. So I looked at Theo. I put my pen down and I took a breath. I said, Theo, I don't think I could do this target. I said, something's scaring me. It's like it's. So Thea says, "Go take a break. Go stand outside." So I go outside and I kind of get grounded because it's really unnerving because you don't know where it's coming from. You don't know what's the cause. Um, so I ended up going back into the session, and maybe one day we'll get into that. It got very strange, but basically, there was very aggressive beings at that target. Okay, and they do not want, basically there's an underground base in the water at that location. Basically, the situation, and it's a no-go zone. Whatever they're doing there, they do not want you remote viewing it. They do not want you looking at it. They want you to get away, and they're not afraid to kind of press it upon you. Now, for the longest time, even to this day, really, I can't review that session. It's too. There's an because I feel that there's like a part of you that kind of goes back there a little bit when you kind of go through it again. So, um, it's the most powerful session I've ever had in not a good way.
You are
So,
not you are not the only one who have this kind of experience where questions for myself came up too. Is it possible that you have a kind of PTSD out
mhm,
of a target area? And I come more and
mhm,
more to the conclusion that something like this can happen, even if you take an aesthetic impact break. Normally, the rules say, protocols say, you take an aesthetic break and you flush that out and coming back into the neutral status, and you will continue with your session. But I think it have an effect in the long term also. So how you said already, we don't know exactly with what we are playing around. We are starting to understand step by step now the process and what's happening there. So and I
mhm,
think we should not overestimate ourselves that we can handle everything and we can do what we want and how we want. I think everything have an equity at least. And I never saw you in a session like that, that I have really to say to you to make a break, to stand up, to drink a little bit water. Please go out, go in the
mhm,
garden, relax a little bit, come back when you're feeling good again. And even in a military remote viewer form, the Stargate program, have a similar experience with that target in the 80s, 90s when he
yeah,
went to there. And for him, still now, he become goosebumps when he's talking about that experience. It is all on the table that we will discuss it later and bring it up on the table for everybody outside. There's a project
mhm,
ongoing from the Psycho side out, and we will make an episode one day. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I think
mhm,
there are a kind of defense systems. They can spot us. Um, I want to jump back to the book Penetration from Ingo Swann, to the situation where
sure,
he went into the Los Angeles supermarket. Um, because it shows that not only to be spotted is one way, this kind of defense system as an ET, I want to say, seems to be possible to influence other beings. So let's start with the supermarket had huge tables loaded with artichokes. At one of
Artichokes,
the
yeah.
artichokes tables was standing a ravishing woman. She was notable not so much for her excessive female physical endowments, but by the fact that they were barely covered. She was dressed in the brightest of colors of pink with big yellow polka dots. Beneath that were short shorts, so short that they barely exist. Far beneath that she wore a pair of platform high heels about 8 inches high. She had volumes of Georgia's black hair and her eyes were covered by purple sunglasses. She was absolutely awesome. I thought, good heavens. She was warm-gauging through the artichokes and I wanted some too. So I worked my way covertly and nonchalantly into her proximity so I could closer appreciate her near-naked breasts. To make this look natural with my eyes barely on them, I fumbled some selected artichokes into a bag. And then, for absolutely no reason at all, I experienced an electrifying wave of goosebumps throughout my whole body. The hair on my arms practically stood at attention, and the hair on my neck definitely did. Yes, this shows an experience what Ingo had in the supermarket, and it more or less in the book he described it like that. It was confirmed that she was an ET, and this shows us clearly um, the possibility is there that they can influence our feelings with their presence. Can we transfer that directly into remote viewing sessions? Out of my experience, yes.
Yeah, and look, and this isn't. You go back to Mel Riley, Ingo, um, Pat, Price. I mean, you know, there's an unhuman presence here, obvious. I mean, now with I mean, at this point, it's just funny to me. Like people are still like having a hard time wrapping their head around this. I mean, beyond that, I can't tell you much more. But it's hard to convince me otherwise. I mean, some of the data, and I've said this before. Like one remote viewer's session on an unverifiable type esoteric target, I wouldn't put much stock in. But when you've got decades of seasoned remote viewers, multiple modalities, hitting this target 10 different ways, they're all basically getting the same thing. I mean, you just being a remote viewer, you just have to, it's like, yeah, I mean, for me personally, I mean, I know some people that just, but again, I think some you got to remember too, guys, that this field, just like anything else, it's it's driven, money driven, just like anything else. And so instructors don't want students to be scared of targets or scared of getting hurt or this and that.
Okay, we have here something from Jacques Vallee. Was super interesting. It matches completely to our topic.
Jacques Vallee, and I was reading, I was going through my Kindle because I like to read quite a bit, and it's funny on the topic. I didn't realize Jacques Vallee had written so many books on this topic. I mean, he has
Yeah,
written a lot of books on this topic.
it is. I show it up here.
And yeah, and I have to assume that guy's in the know. I mean, if anybody's going to that governmental wise about science, I would think they would keep this guy in the loop. But anyway, okay, my own working hypothesis is that there exists a parallel reality to which some individuals have access. Whether such access is accidental, deliberate, or by invitation only, I'm not able to decide. The phenomenon provides evidence that our own world is influenced by a higher force acting from the other reality. Mm.
Okay, when we take this as real, and it is like that, then we have got to overthink, in my opinion, our behavior, what we are doing with remote viewing as well. I mean, as take an example, we can talk about this MS-15 experience. Maybe you're starting with your first, and because what I did there was not remote viewing in a classical sense, and I would not count it under remote viewing, but the experience and the impact for my life
Mm.
was really high too. But you was with controlled remote viewing under blinded conditions solo on their target. And yeah, tell us something
Hmm.
about. It was wow.
Yeah, so I say three passes, but it was more like two and a half. So I go in one day we'll talk about another aspect of this too, where there's a, like a, I never got into this whole target protection thing, which I have no idea where that came from. I don't know if that's an ad thing or what, but I've seen other people use it. But what's funny though, anyway, I got the impression for a myriad of reasons that I should not be on this target once I got there.
Uh,
And but anyway, I pushed ahead, and I was getting really kind of bad feelings. I just had the sense that it's not a good place. I go in there, and it's completely not human. Whatever's going on there, it's definitely otherworldly. Um, it was very sciency, very. I mean, to be honest with you, it almost was like being even if I was there, standing there, like in the physical. I don't know if I could describe to you what was going on there. It was so bizarre, but more than anything, I mean, to be honest with you, it's hard to collect data when I'm getting this oppressive force. Like, again, it's very similar to what I described before. It's a very uncomfortable feeling, and it's a feeling of fear that comes from a place you can't readily identify. Um, and by the third session, my last AI was I can't remember what it was like. I feel like I just cannot. It's very uncomfortable to be here, and I tried to sketch, and I just could not put it on the paper. So, and this is what I'm talking about, this oppression, and I don't know how they're doing it, but it's again, it's that very same thing where it's like, this is a no-go zone. This is a place you cannot remote view. And I did very much get the sense I was getting seen and identified. Um,
uh,
but after that target and after targets like that, I feel terrible. I literally, and we talked about this too, but you just feel like you've been through something. Um, but again, now this MS-15. This is basically Mothership 15, I think, and I didn't really know much about it until after I was tasked it. I looked up. Um,
and, and interestingly,
Go ahead.
most of the people don't know about that. Ingo left only a kind of hint in one of his sketches, and you can see that on his website of Legacy from Ingo Swann. That is shows up, and that it was how I came across that. It was only
Mhm.
that sketch, and you see the sun, you can see the planets, and more near to the sun was kind of object, MS-15. I said, I want
Mhm.
to know what it is. I really have no clue. I sent you to that target, and I went on my own
Mhm.
way to it, and I felt a
Before
similar
you get into that, I want to
experience.
say the third time I got it, after I got to the AI and I stopped, I called Theo. I said, and basically bitched him out. I said, "What the hell is this?" Because like this thing, whatever this is pushing me out so hard. Um, and basically, he's like, "Yeah, that's you've done enough. You don't need to go
Yeah,
any further," because he
I
knows
see.
he knows how oppressive it could be when it's like that.
I really the impressions what we have. It's so funny sometimes, when if you're coming to a place where everything is unknown for you, you have got no possibility to you can describe it, yeah, in your one-word descriptors, but even in your sketches, you don't know what it is, and it is this strange feeling that you feel that you don't know directly what it is, and it's so hard to describe, and because they're technical, um, when I don't know what it is exactly, and I'm starting to remote view that. Um, I can describe it, but I cannot come to more conclusions. I can describe it a little bit, but I cannot build on that data more and more up that I maybe come to my stage
Mm-hmm.
6 or later in the session to a conclusion where I've got maybe an AOL signal what is so close to it because I cannot compare it. Future technology, sci-fi technology, it was a strange experience. For me, I was after that target, I was knocked out for nearly 2 days, like a kind of depressive and completely energetic, sucked out. And
Mm-hmm.
I told then to you also to David that I will not go in any way to this place again. And I always perceived something like an explaining. I won't talk about it. It was like nearly I had the situation um, that I had contact. I had a communication with them, and they more or less explained me like what you're doing there is not a good way to do. It is like the same. We would break into your house in your physical being in
Hmm.
3D, breaking in, sniffing on your skin, sniffing on your pants, looking what you're cooking and
Hmm.
what you're working on the same time, and uh, and not asking you. That is not a way how you contact other beings. You would not
Hmm.
like it as a human being that we are jumping in like that in your house and breaking in, sniffing everywhere around. And it was like a clear message
Hmm.
for myself, and it brought me to think about on another way about the topic. Yeah. Um,
Yeah. And look, and if you got targets like this, maybe, and again, this is our experience. This is experiences that other remote viewers that have talked about, and maybe you don't have this experience. I don't know. And again, but the reason why I really, I mean, the interest part of it, because this is something we talk about, but also as a warning to people, um, that you know basically just be careful.
yeah,
That's all I can
it's
tell you.
it is important as comparing, yeah, when we as human beings, when we're saying the evolution gap between them and us is so big, like to us with to mice or rats. What are
Mhm.
humans doing normally when rats are coming into the house if they're starting to be too much? First, they try to push them away, bring them away, show them other ways. But at least we humans are not not
Mhm.
not friendly or kindly to the small beings, what more or less don't know that they are um, wait, I need das ein englisches Word, stören. Um, that they disturb us, you know. Yeah, no, I've got it. And
Mhm.
then
Mhm.
partly we're killing them, and maybe we have got
Mhm.
to switch our perspective to the same point that we have got to be much more carefully. That we have got to maybe ask for an invite if we're going to that places. I don't want to break in something houses without permission. Uh, I don't want to handle the outside world like this, and I'm pretty sure that other kind of beings don't want to experience things like that. Same like
Mhm.
you don't want that rats are coming in your house and eating and sniffing around. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
A hard
Look. I mean,
opinion, but I
I don't
came
think
to
there's
that
anything.
conclusion.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, you know how I'm convinced there's nothing good going on here. I mean, I don't think anything's. I don't think there's positive out of these things, but that's just my opinion. But we don't know. So again, these are the one other thing I want to bring up too is the other session we both done this session too, but I was once tasked on. Um, I was tasked on the intentions. I think what was the I can't remember the exact tasking, but it was basically kind of around Lou Elizondo, and basically picked up on a guy, basically who he was, all that stuff, the normal stuff you would get from a session. But when I dug into what was around him, I got the same kind of thing. It's very recognizable. It's very unique. I mean, at least from my expression, whatever, it's a very uncomfortable, fear-inducing. It feels almost synthetic. So, but again, and it's always kind of around these things. A lot of times, it's when it's the aggressive thing. It's an unearthly type situation. So, this is the topic that I'm glad
I've got
we got to discuss and openly about.
I really want to quote here again out of Ingo's book when he visited friends of him who were really experienced in that field, and what they said to him um, was, they are dangerous, you know, and they realize that Earth psychics are their only enemies. Be careful, Ingo. Be careful. All of this information package without me ever mentioned the Axelrod event. I'm thinking that we have to overwatch it like this, or to
Hmm.
look to this topic with the help of Ingo's hiding things what he's talking to us.
Yeah, and look, you either look at, Ingo is the one who brought CRV to the military. I mean, we could thank him for what we're doing right now to some degree, but I think it's important to accept too that like his book penetration. I've been taught by the people that he taught CRV to, and Ingo was not a liar. Okay, so you got to look at this book, Penetration, which he always complained was he always professes the complete truth. This guy was a brilliant psychic, brilliant mind, well
Yeah,
read author, artist, just a brilliant man. And you either take his words and you accept them as truth, or you don't. Um, but considering some of the targets that he's talked about and stuff that we've hit in the past, I mean, anyway, this seems to be our experience with some of these targets, and we just wanted to
super
share them with you.
super interesting is what you experienced outside with your own sessions, with your own experience on that topic. You are sensing a kind of sometimes defense systems, or that you are pushed out, or something's really strange on the target, that the data is running out, or you don't want to be on the target anymore. Whatever. If you have something, let us know. Let us talk about. Let us open that topic and bring it to the table.
Yep. Thanks for joining us, guys.